Hey guys, Maroon here, and today I want to talk in depth about something important I saw in Alex O'Connor's recent debate with David Wood. Alex brings up Jesus working on the Sabbath and makes some pretty bold claims about it. He basically says Jesus wasn't claiming to be God, wasn't claiming any divine authority at all, so he was just saying, hey, I'm human, just like David who broke some rules in the Old Testament, so why can't I? Today I want to take some time to unpack this because Alex really misunderstands what's happening here, and it's critical to get things right because a lot of people said their faith was shook because of what Alex said. Let's watch the clip and I'll respond.
I want to talk about this Sabbath moment because this is quite important. This is in John chapter 5 as well. This whole episode sort of hinges on the idea that Jesus is working on the Sabbath. He says, my Father is working, so am I. So your interpretation of this is to say that, well, my Father in heaven, that is God, is working on the Sabbath, so am I, therefore I'm God. This story of Jesus working on the Sabbath is reported in multiple Gospels. In Mark's Gospel, when he's found working on the Sabbath, and the Pharisees say to him, this is Mark chapter 2, look, why are they doing that? It's that which is not lawful on the Sabbath. What does Jesus say in response? Have you not heard what David did? Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need of food? And they enter the house of God and take the food which was not lawful on the Sabbath. So Jesus justifies his breaking of the Sabbath by referring to another human being who also broke the Sabbath. He then tells us that the Sabbath was made for mankind and not mankind for the Sabbath. A very famous quote. The Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. Bearing in mind that although...
The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath.
Yes, bear in mind that although in the Greek, the definite article is given to Jesus when he uses the term Son of Man, it's complicated by the fact that Son of Man without the definite article is just a way of saying human being. So there are some scholars such as Morris Casey who believe that these Son of Man sayings have been corrupted, at least some of them, from originally saying a Son of Man, or the Son of Man in the sense of just meaning a human being. Now, why would that interpretation be correct here? Because Jesus says, firstly, when he's accused of breaking the Sabbath, he says, well, David did the same thing. Was David sinning? The implication is no, which means it can't just be God who breaks the Sabbath. He then says that the Sabbath was made for man, humans, not humans or man for the Sabbath. Therefore, he says, the word is therefore, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. If the Son of Man in some context just means a human being, that's how early church fathers interpreted it, for example. In fact, some of the early church fathers translated the Son of Man as the Son of Mary, because they thought it was Jesus indicating that he was the son of a human being and he was only born of Mary. Given that undertone for this phrase, the Son of Man, how else can I read this passage except Jesus saying, yeah, I'm working on the Sabbath, so did David, and that wasn't wrong. The Sabbath was made for mankind, therefore mankind is Lord of the Sabbath. If it's only God who can work on the Sabbath, then why does Jesus appeal to David?
Okay, first off, let's start by looking at the example Alex gives about King David eating the consecrated bread. Alex says Jesus is appealing to David as a human example, just another guy breaking the rules where necessary. But let's pause here and really think about this. David was hungry, starving, and literally running for his life from King Saul. When he went to the high priest and asked for the bread, the priest gave him bread that was normally reserved for the priests themselves. But did David go in arrogantly and say, hey, I'm the king, I can do whatever I want. I can break the Sabbath if I want. Now give me the bread. No, he went humbly, desperately, and the priest, recognizing the spirit of God's law, this is important, which prioritizes human life and mercy over ritual, gave him the bread. Now this wasn't David asserting his own authority. It was David humbly receiving God's mercy through the priest. It wasn't about breaking the law either. It was about fulfilling the deeper purpose of the law, preserving life, compassion, and mercy. Now let's jump ahead to Jesus. Alex says Jesus is basically doing the same thing. He's breaking rules like David. But Jesus actually takes this a step further. Look carefully at John chapter 5, where Jesus heals a man who had been crippled for 38 years on the Sabbath. When the religious leaders get angry at Jesus for working on the Sabbath, he responds with something far more profound than just, David did it, so why can't I? Jesus says, my Father is working until now, and I am working. Now, let's slow down here and really hear what Jesus is saying. He isn't appealing to human authority or examples. He isn't saying, hey guys, David broke the Sabbath and ate bread, so I could do it too. Cut me some slack here. No, he directly aligns his actions with God the Father. And he says, basically, God is constantly sustaining the universe, even on the Sabbath. And guess what? I have that same exact right as he does. Now, that's not humility or appealing to human examples. That is a bold claim to equality with God. And the Jews understood understood this. That's why John tells us that when Jesus made this claim, they wanted to kill him because he was making himself equal with God. Now, if Jesus was just pointing to David as some mere human example, as Alex is saying, then there would be no reason for them to react this way. I mean, clearly they knew he claimed divine authority. And Alex also brings up Mark chapter 2, where the disciples pick grain on the Sabbath and the Pharisees once again accuse Jesus of breaking the law. Here's what Alex misses completely. Jesus quotes the story of David briefly, yes, but he quickly moves beyond David entirely. He makes a stunning claim. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. Now, let's slow down here and unpack this carefully. First, Jesus says something revolutionary. The Sabbath exists to serve humanity, not to enslave them. God didn't create rules to crush people. He created the rules to bless them. But then Jesus says something even more radical. The Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. Now, Alex says Son of Man could just mean any human being. But is that true? Not at all. Jesus is clearly referencing Daniel chapter 7, where Daniel sees a vision of a figure called the Son of Man who comes down on the clouds of heaven, receives worship, and rules forever with divine authority. Now, early Christians, Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, Athanasius, they all clearly saw that Jesus, when he claimed to be the Son of Man, he wasn't downplaying his identity. It was him revealing exactly who he is, the heavenly figure that Daniel spoke about, who won with everlasting dominion, worthy of worship, and equal with God himself. Think about it practically. Who created the Sabbath? God did. Who has authority over the Sabbath? Only God does. For Jesus to stand there and say, I am the Lord of the Sabbath, he's saying plainly and clearly, I have the authority that only belongs to God. I define what true Sabbath rest is. Now, this isn't just a simple human appeal here. It's an explicit divine claim made by Christ. And if Jesus was just another human being, then why didn't he just stop talking after David? I mean, he could have just easily said, David ate bread and he broke the Sabbath when he was hungry. Now, I just want to do something similar to him. However, Jesus doesn't do that. He deliberately moves beyond David claiming an authority and identity far beyond anything David would ever dream of. Now, David received mercy through a priest. Jesus declares that he is a source of mercy itself. David received bread he had no right to. Jesus calls himself the bread of life. David lived within the boundaries of God's law. Jesus takes a step forward and defines those boundaries himself. This difference is so massive, and this is what Alex missed here. Now, remember, it's not just in these Sabbath stories. Jesus consistently and repeatedly claims authority only God can claim. Earlier in Mark chapter 2, he forgives a paralyzed man's sins. The religious leaders rightly think, who can forgive sins but God alone? Now, Jesus doesn't argue. He proves his authority by healing the man. By doing so, he's saying, yes, you're right. Only God can forgive sins. And guess what? I'm forgiving sins right now. Now, this wasn't accidental. Jesus intentionally took actions and said words that made it crystal clear he was claiming divine authority. And I'm not even done yet. Later in Mark 2, Jesus calls himself the bridegroom. In the Old Testament, Isaiah chapter 54 verse 5, for example, the bridegroom of Israel was God himself. For Jesus to call himself the bridegroom, that's not just poetic language Jesus is using here. It was another bold claim that he himself was Israel's God come in human flesh. So Alex tries to simplify these stories to make Jesus seem merely human, relatable, just another man finding loopholes and exceptions in the law. But the Gospels themselves won't allow that reading. Jesus doesn't come humbly asking permission to bend a few rules. He steps onto the scene as the one who gave the rules. He doesn't merely follow the Sabbath, he is the Lord of the Sabbath. He doesn't merely hope for mercy, he offers mercy freely and openly because he is the source of mercy itself. Now, here's why this is important for you. Because if Jesus is just another teacher, just another man who found clever ways around the law, right? Then we can safely ignore him whenever we choose. But if he is who he actually claimed to be, the Lord of creation, the divine Son of Man from Daniel 7, and the one equal with God himself, then ignoring him is not just risky, it's impossible. He demands our full attention because his words carry ultimate authority, and his actions aren't just mere human examples, they're revelations of who God is. So, I have to say, Alex, you completely missed the point entirely. You've misunderstood David, and you've misunderstood the Sabbath, and you've also misunderstood what the title Son of Man means. Alright guys, if you enjoyed this video, please let me know what you think in the comments. Share your thoughts, objections, and questions. I'd love to hear from you. Hit that subscribe button to stay connected, and as always, keep pursuing truth and living for the one who's truth himself.